Welcome to Journey to Authenticity, the podcast designed to help you become your true authentic self, create a clear vision for life, and ultimately step into a life of transformation. I'm your host, Braiden Belnap. I'm a transformational life coach, speaker, and entrepreneur dedicated to helping you do just that, transform your life. But what if you're in a position in life where maybe you're just going through a hard season? You feel out of alignment. You don't feel like you're really living into purpose, and you don't have a community around you to help you out or to help you get to those dreams. That's exactly why we're bringing on Kirsten Asher Brossette to help us in that today, where we're going to talk through purpose, how to lean into alignment, how to build a community, and how to get creative in making your dreams a reality. With that in mind, welcome to the show, Kirsten.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We met shout out to Kelly.
Yeah,
right?
The Vibe Room. I had no idea what to expect going. And ironically, my husband, Mo, had been on Kelly's podcast years before. And so when we got the tickets, he's looking through the things. He's like, oh my gosh, I know this guy. This is amazing. And so they walked in and they had that moment of like, hey, I didn't realize you would be here. And so it was cool to see that interaction, but then also be there to experience something that was so interconnected. And it wasn't just, talking heads, and it was actually about connecting. In the group that we were in, we were able to connect in that and get to know each other from that.
Yeah,
which was cool. Absolutely.
So many connections built off of one day.
Mm-hmm.
Friends are such a blessing in this world.
I agree.
Family's a blessing. It's important to lean in and build those connections and go to events like that.
Mm-hmm.
I always try to do an event at least once a quarter like that.
Oh, that's a good goal.
Just because, again, the people you meet, they become blessings in your life for a lifetime. But that's where this podcast has become a blessing, is because I meet people like you where someday I have kids and then they're going to become teenagers, and they, as much as I would hope they look up to me, if they start to look elsewhere, they'll have awesome people around them. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, it's creating that community of people that help you grow and vice versa. It's really nice and people who will hold you to a higher standard, I think, is really important too. And being able to talk through things and say, this is where I'm at, and be completely open about it, and have them hold that space and also call you forward and say, okay, great. Let's see you grow. Absolutely. I believe in you. I think that's huge, especially if you're raising children, like that community aspect of, them looking at, I see my niece and she's 18 now. And now that we moved back, I get to spend more time with her. And it's just been so cool to have these really deep conversations with her that we didn't have before. But now I feel like I can be somebody in her life that she can look up to or learn something from. And it's really beautiful. It doesn't even encapsulate it. It's like an honor.
You said it's an honor. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that. Well, to jump into things, you have so much going on, which is, I love seeing your art, the School of Badassery. I'm saying that right. School of Badassery. Everything you're doing, I love.
Thank you.
What initially inspired entrepreneurship for you?
I was thinking about this a little while back, and I remember in college when you would actually use Craigslist to look for jobs. I don't know if people still do that.
What is that? Just kidding.
But I was like, how can I get a job where I'm not going into an office, but I'm making an impact and I have a little bit of control over my schedule, maybe not full control over my schedule, but where there's flexibility. And I was looking at remote work and just random jobs of organizing people's record collection or something that was just very odd, but I always had that desire to just not do something that is the traditional route of whatever that is, and the traditional job, and had that mindset of creation. I guess it all comes down to creation. I wanted to create something and wasn't really finding it out there of what other people had. Now I'm learning that collaboration is great. And then the last few years, it's been really cool to collaborate with all these different people and grow together. But initially it was just that desire to create something for myself.
I love that. We're all creators. at heart, whatever that means. That's subjective. Like creation, like what does that mean? It means different. We're all human. We tie words to different. We attach them. We're meaning makers, is what I'm trying to say, right? What does your life want to mean to you? And that's a beautiful thing. Creating is important.
I agree.
And you've done a good job at it too.
Thank you.
I assume jumping into entrepreneurship, and even now, I assume it's not all unicorns and rainbows. Or has it just been easy for you?
No, not at all. It's been a journey. And what I shared with you before is I was talking to a friend and I said, there's so many ups and downs right now. I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. And she said, it's a symphony. And that completely transformed now how I see things. It's okay where you have the low notes and the high notes, and it's all working together and it's all creating something beautiful. And when you're in the thick of it, sometimes it doesn't feel that beautiful, but there's so many. I'm somebody who's just constantly having ideas, and what we were talking about a little bit ago, the shiny object syndrome.
Yes.
Where it's like, oh, what about this? And what about this? And you can do this. And so over the years, I've really worked on myself to figure out what is the through line, and what does that actually mean to me? Some people can say, I'm an entrepreneur. I know software development, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to go hardcore into software development. And I feel for myself, I have all these ideas and I see things and I'm like, oh, I could do it better. It's not I haven't been able to, like School of Badassery. So many women's groups are, they're great, but they were never aligned with what I felt like I wanted. Yes, the cacao circles are great, and the sound baths and these beautiful circle type vulnerable spaces are great because so many people do need that healing. And I want to go do martial arts. I want to go target shooting. I want to go do archery and these just like different activities, but relate it all back to growth and how we can step up into these different spaces that may be uncomfortable or learning something new, but are a little bit more on the edgier side. So that's why I wanted to create School of Badassery, where we're still talking about doubt and habits and growth and boundaries, and just taking it in a different way of how do you create that own inner badass, which is different for everybody, and giving space for people to explore what those ingredients are for them in a realm where you don't have to be hyper feminine. You don't have to be super, in the flow all the time. You could go to MMA and train and then go dance, and I think it's a really cool balance to be, or not balance, but like dance is the best thing. It was like way to dance between the two.
Well, that's important. Oftentimes people fall to one side or the other, but why not both?
Yeah.
To me, there's like, okay, there's man and there's men and women, right? Every single individual, no matter what sex you quote unquote are, masculine and feminine energy is essential to truly find your authentic self, because it allows you to be set free and to find who you truly desire to be. And we're all human, we're all different. That's what's so cool about us. But there is that yin and yang of finding who you want to be with both. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that polarity. It goes back to the Hermetic principles or the universal laws. You need the contrast of what is there. And, attraction or law of polarity or cause and effect, there is this dance between two opposites, which I think is really cool and important to learn about yourself. Is what does that look like for me? Do I want to be, or am I, not even do I want to be, but is my soul pulling me a little bit more this way or a little bit more this way? Or sometimes I can flow in between, where if my husband's around, great. My awareness is my husband's going to protect me. I'm like a 5-year-old. I'm dilly-dallying. I'm looking around. I'm getting lost. And when he's not there, my awareness is on point. I'm situational awareness. I'm looking around. Eyes are up. I'm not looking at my phone. And so I can dance in between those two, which I think is really important, not for only women, but men too. It's like, men, you don't always have to be this big, gruff thing. You can have this compassionate side of you, and that's what's beautiful as well.
Absolutely. It's the vulnerability of life.
Mm-hmm.
And depending why community is so important is that you enhance everything about each other. As long as you're in the right community, right? Because it could go the other way.
I don't know about this.
And I quite frankly, I've been both. Now I'm grateful to believe and fully believe that I bring out the best in other people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time in my life that it was the exact opposite. I was enhancing people's not so great side. But also, I look back on those times and I'm grateful for that because you grow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that vulnerable sense of being able to say, you know what, I've been living wrong. I was wrong. Apologizing. It's like being able to recognize where you have that growth opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
where you can be vulnerable in different senses and grow with other people is a beautiful thing.
I agree. It was years ago. I don't even remember how many years, but because of Facebook, you can link back up with people. And I had made a post. I don't even remember what the post was, but it was about being kind to people. And somebody I went to high school with was just like, how could you be posting this? You were the worst in high school. And in my head, I was like, oh, I thought I was actually really nice in high school. Maybe I didn't treat them well and I didn't remember, but I just said, I'm so sorry. That was way back then. I've had a lot of growth since then and a lot of really understanding myself and my actions and behaviors. So I'm sorry if I was mean to you, that. And he came back, he's like, oh, I really appreciate you saying that. And I can tell that you had some growth. And the next time I came into town, we went out to lunch. It was a really cool interaction to, because you perceive and see and experience things in one way, and people can see and experience you in another way. Or just like how trauma happens when you're a kid, your mom says no, and then all of a sudden that becomes a big thing because they don't care about you, and you've gone through your whole life thinking that your mom doesn't care about you because she told you no one time. It's those things that can kind of play out, and it's about perspective. But when you can step back and not be defensive and just say, holy cow, like, I'm sorry that is what happened, or you perceived it that way. That's not what I meant. Or if you were mean and you actually knew you were mean, apologizing and being able to forgive your past self and hopefully get forgiveness from that person, and then just continue growing and continue forward. I think it's really cool to be able to hold yourself in that.
Absolutely. And to relate to that is, so there's three things that I can respect from anybody, mainly like leaders, to say the least, or parents, is if they say one or all three of these things. I'm sorry, I was wrong, or I don't know, let's find the answer together.
Those are cool. Those are great.
If any leader says that, I'll have immediate respect, because that tells me that you are willing to be vulnerable. You're willing to rumble with the good and the things that don't serve either yourself, a family, a relationship, or an organization, right? But where people can fall wrong to vulnerability is that vulnerability is not vulnerability without boundaries. And that's something really important to call out, because oftentimes people just sit in emotions, even with themselves. They'll just sit in emotions and they'll sit there. They call it vulnerability, but that's not vulnerability. There needs to be a way to transform. And that's important. I mean, I'll relate to that. You mentioned giving yourself forgiveness and then hoping to get forgiveness from somebody else, right? There was a time in my life when, I know you know my story, but for the audience, anybody that's new, welcome, of course. But I went, in 7th grade, I started down petty theft, drugs, alcohol, a deep, dark hole for young kids. In that part of my life, I actually stole money from my own brother. That ate me alive for years. Before I even met Megan over here, my beautiful wife, I promised myself that I would pay my brother back in full and apologize before I got married. So when I proposed to her, I knew it was time. So I took him out to dinner, and I'm so blessed. My brother's name's Christian. He's definitely acts like a Christian too. So I'm blessed that I did get that forgiveness. But sometimes you have to be okay saying, hey, my bad. Can we grow through this together?
Yeah.
And that was such a healing moment. Not just for myself, but for him. That apologize, like for your example, I would only assume, I can't speak for who that person was, but I bet that transformed his life in ways that we probably can't even comprehend.
Yeah. Yeah. Forgiveness is a really interesting animal, because I've been in instances where my dad wasn't around, and I hadn't talked to him since I was 13. And then I showed up, randomly got this job for freelancing at the time, and they were sending me to Oregon, and he lived in Eugene, and I was going to be in Portland. And I was like, this is great, because 3 days before I had this epiphany to forgive him, and then showed up on his doorstep, and we talked from probably 11 a.m. until 2 a.m. and just had this really great conversation. And I wouldn't have had that if I just stayed mad the whole entire time and, was just pushed everything away and avoided it. But there was something within me that recognized this is something that needs to be done. And I almost understood from an outside perspective, his possible perspective of why he was away for so long and what he was going through. And then to be able to have that conversation. And now I have a relationship with my dad. Same thing with my brother. He was very hard to deal with, his past and addiction. And as a kid getting yelled at, and he's 15 years older than me. So he's this big guy yelling at me. And eventually, after I had forgiven my dad, I think it was a year later that I called my brother and I forgave him. And now we have such a great relationship. And sometimes you don't necessarily have a relationship with somebody after you forgive them, and it's not required by any means, but being able to just put that to rest. Because it just kind of, it's like an energy waste back here. And you hear somebody or you hear their name, you're like, oh, they were terrible to me. And that's creating that negative line and that energy leak wherever it is.
Yeah.
On the back burner.
It's real though.
Yeah.
Like that energy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or those triggers. And if you are able to just let go of that and just say you were doing I know so many people say this all the time, but they're doing the best they knew how at that moment with the tools that they had. And maybe it wasn't great, and maybe it wasn't great for you. They were most likely going through whatever turmoil was going on in their head, and they were having to deal with that plus whatever situation. And being able to recognize that it's not saying it was okay, but it's saying, I forgive you, and let's put it to rest and move forward. And I'll give a third example is you don't always have to tell the person. There was a boyfriend who cheated on me, and there was time where he would call me. He's like, I just need your forgiveness. And this was my child self coming out, and all the things that personal development spews when they haven't actually done the work. And I said to him, I'm like, I'm not required to tell you that I forgive you. Forgiveness is for me too. And so I'm going to forgive you on my own time, but I don't have to tell you when that is. You need to forgive yourself for what you did and work on you, but it's not a requirement for me to tell you, I now release you of this forgiveness. That's your work to do. So I think and maybe that's the wrong way to think about it, but that's how I see it, is you don't always have to tell the person. It's an internal thing.
1,000%. What I love of I forget your exact words, but what I always tell to people, because when I'm working with somebody around forgiveness, is I share my story of stealing money from my brother. Is that something that I wear with a badge of honor? No, but I'm actually grateful for that because of how much that one story has impacted so many. You can forgive. That doesn't mean you have to forget.
Yep.
sometimes, and I'm so blessed that you're so blessed, and I feel so grateful that you have a relationship with your dad and brother now. Sometimes forgiveness just comes to the fact that like, hey, that doesn't mean we have a relationship, but you set yourself free.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you get forgiveness or you receive forgiveness and you develop sometimes an even stronger relationship, which is a beautiful thing in itself.
Yeah.
But we don't always have to forget. That doesn't mean you go back to an ex that cheated you and treated you like crap.
Okay, let's hang out.
Yeah. You can forget and move forward with your life,
Mm-hmm.
which makes you stronger as a human being in going through that process of forgiveness, setting you up for a greater relationship, possibly with somebody else for the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I want to take it back, if you're okay with your childhood.
Sure.
And the reason I want to take it back there is you mentioned your father wasn't around. Entrepreneurship can, from my perspective, can take form in a couple of aspects. Maybe there was a mentor that you looked up to. For some people, you just had a dad or a mom or an aunt or an uncle or a friend that pursued entrepreneurship, found success, and was able to show you that this is possible. Sometimes we're born into that, and sometimes we learn. Would you say that you were born into that and you had a mentor, or did you learn how to be an entrepreneur over time?
It was over time. My mom, single mom, worked 4 jobs and saw her just put in so much work and never really get ahead. And as I went through college and into my early 20s, and I was working in production. So in production in many places, if you're freelance, you're on for however long the project is, you wrap it. I was on the production side, not the filming side. So you'd have pre-production, production, and then post-production. Once that's done, you move on to the next one. So I got a little bit of that taste of entrepreneurship because it's all about relationships. If you're getting called by the producer or the production manager, that's based off of relationships. You want to put your best foot forward, so they hire you on the other jobs. You have flexibility of taking this job over this job, or sometimes they would go for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then you'd have a week off. And I think that was the moment where I had the actual taste of what it could be being an entrepreneur. And then a girlfriend at the time, her and I were just having a conversation. She had written a book, and she was a former roommate, and then we reconnected and we were hanging out. And she tells me about Marie Forleo and this school, business B-School. And so I did that program, and that's where I realized that you can step out on your own and you can develop a business around the things that you enjoy and that you love. So that was like a more roundabout way. And then the more I stepped into that, the more entrepreneurs I would meet. But I didn't have that one person that I knew, like a physical person. It was more so learning from all these different spaces and just kind of weaving it together in my own little quilt of, okay, this is what you do, this is what you not do, this is what you don't do, because I already did that 3 times and it didn't work. So I'll go in this direction. And of course, just diving into personal development and really recognizing, I think relationships and entrepreneurship are the best ways of learning about yourself and the best personal development, because you're constantly, for entrepreneurship, having to put yourself out there, having to put your creations out there, whether it is a software developer or an artist or personal development coach and helping people. But then it's also this relationship that you have to create with your business, or not you have to create, but you get to create that. But even being with Mo or past relationships, those were so eye-opening, because now you're dealing with another person who you're in a very tight relationship with, and how do you communicate the best with them if they have different communication ways or conflict, and their past always comes in, your past always comes in, and how are you working through that? So I think it it was like a crash course. Honestly, throughout the years, it was a really big crash course. And then you just learn, and then you meet other people who give you advice, and you try what fits and keep that. And if something doesn't fit, you just kind of, okay, I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, that's a crash course is a good way to put that. I like that. That's important. And it's enjoying the journey.
Mm-hmm.
What I love in this, if anybody ever says they figured it out, you probably need, like, if anybody's like, I have everything figured out, you probably got to run the other way.
Mm-hmm.
This is a journey. Like, this podcast is called Journey to Authenticity for a reason. Authenticity is a choice. Am I going to be my best self with with what I know now at this moment, or am I not?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a journey. You're always learning, whether that's learning stuff about yourself, a partner that you're in a marriage with, or a boyfriend, girlfriend, or even just a friend, but also professional. You're always learning new things. And that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I forget where I learned this, but they were talking about specifically with relationships and partnership. There's you, them, and then in the middle is a third pillar, and that's the relationship. So you're feeding into the third pillar, they're feeding into the third pillar. You're not trying to complete each other. You're both working towards making this third pillar powerful. And you can relate that to business. This is, you have the CEO and the COO, and they're both feeding into this third pillar, which is the business. Or if it's if you're a single entrepreneur, like, this is what I'm putting in, and then the customer or who you're serving is on that other side, and they're also putting into your business, because you need to make sure that it's something that they like and they want and they desire, and so they're almost feeding that as well, and you're learning from what that is. But that third pillar is so important, because it takes it outside of you, especially if you have a business where you are the business. It's not software development. You are selling yourself, and it could be so personal, and you can take hits that feel so personal. And so when you're able to separate it and say, this is the third pillar that I'm feeding into, it's not entirely me. And what happens with the business, if it doesn't go well, it's not because you failed, it's just business. And maybe something needs to be tweaked. Maybe you need to develop something a little bit more, take a different direction. And I've taken so many different directions and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, what is my soul wanting, and my creation, and the way that I do things may be different than somebody else, but I'm trying to set it up in the same way that somebody else had success. And I think no matter what business you have, there is a little piece of that, because we always try to use somebody else's framework because it worked for them. And also having the flexibility that, try on what works or try it on. What works, keep. What doesn't work, throw it away, and be quick to throw it away. So then you're figuring that out, and you're taking a framework over here, and you're taking a framework over here, and you're putting the pieces together to see what works for you, rather than taking the hit of, oh, this didn't go how I'm speaking from personal experience. This didn't go how I wanted it to go, or I was imagining it to go. And it's okay, because I didn't fail as a person. It's just, this isn't the way that it needs to be right now. And how can I tweak it?
Absolutely. I love this. And something I really admire about you is you have your dance, you have your art, you have School of Badassery, you're embracing like training with MMA. It's MMA, right? Mm-hmm. There's one more thing that you train with.
When I was in Colorado, I was doing Krav Maga.
Krav Maga. Yeah, that I've never heard of that before, so I'm curious about that. But my main question is like, a lot of that does revolve around you. Like, you are the business, right? How have you remained your true authentic self as you've gone through and developed these skill sets to serve other people, even when that may not be received the way you want it to be received for another?
It can be difficult, because the way you see something is different than the wants and desires that somebody else may have. And I'll take the School of Badassery, for example. Trying to explain it in a way that is enticing to somebody and saying, oh, I need that. I'm more like of a direct person, but then in marketing, it's like, okay, speak to this and speak to this. And I'm like, this is just what it is. Why do I have to jump through all these hoops and loops and all of the different things? I did get caught up in, what am I creating for other people to say yes to? But then it was moving to what those people wanted rather than what I was capable of doing or what was exciting for me. And even, in a few weeks, I'm partnering with my MMA coach and we're hosting a women's self-defense. And people say, oh, that's so cool. But to say yes to it and to actually take action to go is different because it's a little bit more confronting. And being in that space where, sometimes people will want something that you're offering and sometimes people will not want what you're offering. It plays with you and it plays with your emotions too when you're so tied into it. And really having people, going back to community, having people around you who can ground you, or if something just goes sideways or goes down the hill and you can call up that one friend and just say, this is what's going on, and have them almost reassure you of like, it's not you, it just wasn't the right time, or it wasn't the right audience, or it wasn't, there's some tweaking to do. But going back to that failure, it's not you as a human being who failed. And so having the things that you truly love to do and having that come through and practicing those. And, there's times where I turn on the music. I did this morning and I was just dancing around with my dogs and, the new spray paint can showed up. And so I'm excited to go home and paint after this. So it's continuing to do the things that light you up, even though they may not be part of your business. Doing what makes you happy, having those hobbies, going out on a hike, getting out in nature, finding the things that light you up and coming back to those over and over and over and over again, and having those community members and friends and family that you can trust, who can hold you in that space of your vulnerability. And you're just like, I'm a mess right now. And they still see the light, and learning that even though you may be in the mess, you are still that light.
And you might be the light for somebody else too, even when it doesn't feel like you have anything to offer. You mentioned being able to open up to the people around you. Sometimes there's a friend going through hell and they're just stuck. If you reach out and you're like, hey, I'm having a hard time, can I get your help? And you let them serve you, that can just be a serving to them.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. And it makes you feel real, especially if you're a person who on the outside needs to look like you have it all together because you have this business, or because your business is a personal brand. Or even if it is, some sort of CEO or manager, or like, we all put on this forward facing front that we've got everything together. And sometimes it's not intentional. It's just, I need to make sure that I'm getting all my ducks in a row, and I'm not necessarily showing everybody the hard stuff, because that is private. But being able to share that with people, maybe not when you're going through it at the moment, but sharing with the people who look up to you, like, I went through this as well. And you humanize yourself, which I think is important for people to see. If you are a leader, or if you're a manager, if you're somebody who is caring for a group of people, whether that's friends, family, your team, letting them know, like, I have hard times too, and it's human and it's okay. And how can we move through those? And what kind of tools do you need in order to move through those? Because there are so many tools out there. It just takes a little bit of digging to figure out what works for you.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of wisdom here, which I hope you realize, like, how much you're really offering to me as well. Honestly, thank you. Was there a time in your life where you're like, you know what? I think I got this. Or did it take some time, or do you feel like you always had it?
I still don't think I have it. realizing that it's just everybody goes through their own mess, and this too shall pass. And what can you learn when you're in that space? But yeah, even just in the new twists and turns of life, it's like, okay, I have these tools that I know I can lean on. I have these people I know I can lean on. Now, what am I doing to move forward and not stay stuck in, like you were talking about, that rumination of the emotion and like this misery loves company. So you start going down that spiral. You're going to keep going down that spiral unless you, one, pull yourself out, or you have somebody who's able to pull you out. But being able to say, I'm going to feel this, I'm going to go through it, I'm going to experience it, and what am I going to learn, so then I can just keep going forward. And it's not avoidant, because you're feeling what's happening, you're feeling that emotion. But I think throughout the years, you learn more and more and more, and then you just have so many more things in your toolbox that I don't know if I will ever have it all like
Figured
out. Yeah, because there's always something new.
Absolutely. What I love about this is, it's all related to my own life. Of like, there was a time in my life where I genuinely like hated myself from day, and don't get me wrong, I never give up. And at that time, I respect myself for that. I consistently showed up, and there's something to say about that. But I do remember a time in my life where I was like, I actually love myself. That doesn't mean that I have it figured out. I'm still working through some things and growing through some things. But you mentioned that toolbox. Is that if you keep showing up, you're going to have more resources. And sometimes we need to pull from a book or a friend. And sometimes, since you've had that life experience, you're like, oh, this kind of looks like this situation that happened this time, and this is what I did to overcome that. And so you start to get results quicker.
Yeah.
Whether that's with yourself, or relationship, or with life overall. So I agree. Figuring it out, that's subjective, right?
It's a good point.
My definition of figured it out is I can consistently move through life and be okay. Even in the chaos, I still can be happy. I know we talked about this before the podcast, of like, life can get hard. Days can be hard. But can you still be good in those days? Can you still be good in those seasons?
Yeah. And even in the hard, what can you do to bring light and fun and play? Because there's, the spiral, if you're spiraling down, what are those things, that one song that pulls you out, or that one song that makes you feel so good and you could just jam in your car and sing at the top of your lungs, or in your house, or out in the park? But what are those things that, despite anything that's going on, good or bad, hard, challenge, whatever it is, what are the small little things that you can do of, this is a really crappy day, week, month, but I have this little tool, or I can go out in nature and just sit and lay back and look at the sun 20 minutes a day. It reminds me of being a kid and just watching the clouds and seeing if I could find a bear or a reptile or a shark, and, being able to take it back to those childhood happiness moments. And music is such a powerful tool as well. And we all have that one song that, maybe you love hardcore metal, but there's this one pop song this one country song that you're like, oh my God, this is my jam. Put it on in those moments and just allow yourself moments to get out of the grief, or out of the hard, and out of the suck. And then so many more ideas can happen. You can start to find the solution when you're not like this to the heart, whatever this is going on. You can step back, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, a week later, you're like, that I can actually use this and put it over here, and it fits.
Totally.
Or something will work out, or somebody will say something, or you'll meet somebody because now you listened to your fun song, you went and got coffee, you met somebody in the line, and they're like, oh, great, I actually need what you need. We need what you're serving or sharing. So let's connect. Or I have somebody, it's just, you never know.
Absolutely. What came to mind when you were saying that? And then I have a question for you. Lilo and Stitch. When what's her? I forget the character's name, but when she shuts the door, locks it, turns up the music, and just sits on her floor and just jams.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need those moments.
Yeah. It's just, how can you bring play into your life, especially as an adult?
Absolutely.
Fun.
We need to remember that kid in us. 1,000%. What is your go-to song? I'm curious.
I have a few, and I cycle through a bunch of them. One is I think it's not Big Wild. I think it's Gigantic something, but it's called Sixes to Nines. So Sixes to Nines, and then there's Queendom by song titles and artists. Always, it takes me a minute. I'll send you who they are. But it's called Queendom, and it's like Micah Russell, and then she has this other one called Hey Child, and it's all about just feeling good and like, I've got this. And so I'll turn on those songs and I'm like, yes, I've got this. I'm just jamming, I'm having fun, I'm dancing around, and now I'm good. Now I've shifted my energy, so now I can go back to whatever it was. But Sixes to Nines is that's a fun one. Just like anytime it comes on and I'm all and you just have to sing it.
Yeah. 1 second.
1 second.
Let me call you back.
Conversation and because it's like you turn my sixes to nine. That's what the chorus is. And so anytime it comes on in the car, I always look at Mo and I'm like, and he just shakes his head. He's like, here we go. I'm singing it at the top of my lungs, and every word is usually wrong.
Hey, that's okay. That means you're having fun.
I've got the sixes to nine part and then making it up.
I'm the same way. Like if you're like, hey, what's your favorite band or what's your favorite song? I love everything. I'll listen to classical and I'll listen to screamo. I'm not sure how much my wife likes that part. But yeah, I will, depending on the day, I just embrace all music.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah. On the way over here, I was listening to country and I was like cycling through, okay, this is my favorite one because I know the words to it, and just, it shifts. And that's one thing I love about dance, is because for me, dance is not about the choreography. It's about creating the relationship with the music and allowing the music to move your body, and not thinking of the movement, but just, what is it doing? It's not, it's not this type of thing, but how can you move to the words or the harmony or the beat? And that relationship is so beautiful. And music is just, it has a very incredible way of shifting your energy. And it can also, if it's a sad song, it can shift you into that space too. And you're like, oh, I was having a great day. Now I just listened to this song and I'm thinking about that person. And that's another reason to forgive and just let things go. Is so when you hear that sad song who reminds you of that person, you're like, oh, that was an experience. That doesn't have a hold on me. I have the power.
Absolutely.
That's a side tangent.
I actually love this. And what the word that came to mind was permission. Like, for example, let's just say I'm having a hard day, right? This is because music's a big deal for me. I don't necessarily I have not an artist that I listen to. I have playlists with different kinds of music. So I even have a sad playlist, but I'll give myself permission. Okay, I'm going to listen to sad music for the next 5 minutes. I'm going to feel it. And then I'm going to turn on some of the happy music.
I like that.
And it's important to give yourself the permission to feel all emotions, but also how are you going to get out?
Yeah. Yeah. And they're all, emotions are, once I started learning about emotions, I went down a rabbit hole. And because I was always pushing, I'm avoidant. If you look at not the personality types, attachment types, I'm the avoidant person where I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to turn away. And so learning about emotions was really interesting because emotions are telling you something. They are full of information. If you're angry, if something frustrates you, if something makes you sad, it's giving you information. And when you are able to sit with it and you are able to say, okay, what is this emotion telling me and why am I feeling it? And being able to feel it. And then actually in this one book, it's called Bulletproof. She talks about, it's a female Secret Service. I don't know if she was the first female Secret Service person or what it is, but she was in the Secret Service, and she would always have to have this tough outlook, tough way of being, very stoic. And she said in the book, if something happens that it's a heavy emotion, I give myself, great, this is like a 10-minute thing that I need. Or maybe I need 24 hours. And in 24 hours, when that hour hits, I'm shifting my energy. I'll be in it for however long I need to be in it, but I'm putting a time limit on, like you were talking about before. What is that? And how much time do I actually need to be in this before it starts spiraling? And then move yourself out of it and take that information and what are the conversations I need to have? Was it somebody who I need to say, hey, I need to set this boundary? Or when you said this is how I experienced it. And so I want to talk about this so it doesn't happen again because I value our relationship. So what is it pointing you to, and how can you work with it and move through it rather than having it have this like stronghold on you?
Absolutely. Because you can go one of two ways, right? You can be stuck in it or you can not feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've experienced both. I forget exactly what age I was, but in a span of around 12 months, I lost 6 family members. Wow. And I was totally avoidant. Like, maybe I gave myself a couple of times to cry or whatever, but I was like, nope, not doing it. And I just kept moving it. But guess what? Those emotions just kept coming, and they don't go away unless you give yourself permission to work through them. Mm-hmm. And that's important. As a coach, but also just as somebody that like loves deeply of other people, it's interesting. But if you just we were talking about music doesn't music doesn't tell you where you're at emotionally. But if you start consciously listening to what other people are listening to, it'll be a pretty big insight of where you're at and how you can help other people as well.
That is a really cool way to look at it. Can you give me some examples?
Yeah. So let's just say I'm with my brother or sister on just a typical day, and they're the ones choosing the music. If it's sadder music or slower music, it's an easy way to tell where they're at emotionally. So there's times where I've personally heard people listening to sad music. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And actually meaning that too. Mm-hmm. Or how can I support you? But also on the flip side, a lot of times when people say, how can I support you? How many times are we asked that every single day? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm asked that all the time. And don't get me wrong, I ask that as well. If I'm going to ask it, it comes from a place of, I don't know how I can fully support you right now, so please tell me, and it's genuine. Mm-hmm. But also it's a matter of, if you know how to support somebody, then just do it and don't ask. That's
a great point. It's a really great point. I think 2 things to the music. I love that. I'm going to adopt that. Next time I'm going to be really listening to what people are listening to. And that's the same thing with apology, I think, where people will just say, oh, I was wrong, sorry, but they're not actually meaning it from the heart. And when somebody can look you in the eye and just say, I am sorry, what can I do to fix, not necessarily fix it, but what can I do to repair whatever needs to be repaired? It's like, what is it? Not ikigai, kintsugi. Kintsugi is when like a vase breaks. It's Japanese. So when the vase breaks, they mend it back together with platinum, gold, or something of a higher metal, so it becomes more precious as it's repaired, like when it's done being repaired, rather than just being a beautiful crystal bowl or a porcelain bowl. It breaks, they repair it with a higher metal, and now it's even more precious. And that's where I think we can take something from that, as I broke in this moment and I mended myself together, and now I'm better for it. So when you have the meaning behind the words, it's so much more. It's like, okay, I want to help you repair, or help us repair, or help me figure out how to repair whatever is going on or whatever was broken. I think it's a cool way.
Absolutely. I love that. So I want to bring that back to you, right? We talked about, it was kintsugi. Am I saying that right?
I think it's kintsugi. Kintsugi or kintsugi? I think it's kintsugi.
Kintsugi. We'll go with that. If we're wrong, correct us. Anyways, so we talked about how you had that experience with your brother and your dad. When was the time that you found yourself broken, but then kintsugi'd? I don't know if that works.
It does.
When was the time that you found yourself repaired and more precious?
It's a good question. There's different levels.
You're like, I have so much. How much time do we have?
Yeah, I know. Well, because there's like the little tiny cracks, and then the ones that really, really break open. And for me, it's been feeling like we were talking about that failure of being so tied to something, and when it doesn't work out, it's just your world comes crashing down because you're so intertwined with what it is that you were bringing to the world. And if the world doesn't want it, I just saw myself as, well, they don't want me. Like, I'm not the person to bring them this. Or yeah, it was just like, I'm like, I know I have had breakdowns.
Can I maybe be more specific?
Yeah.
When was the time that you felt lost or I'm not enough?
Oof. It's a good question
Where
too.
you came out on the other side.
There is one of the biggest turning moments was when I was younger. Dad was gone, fought with brother all the time. You know, when I got a little bit older, instead of just going like, timidly going away and crying, I would stand up to him and I'd press his buttons even more. And it got more intense and more scary. And I didn't want to be the sister who backed down. Like I'm very sensitive, but in that moment, I was like, F you. I'm going to stand my ground. And after those moments, I would go upstairs and I started cutting. So my dad didn't want me. My brother was mean to me. I felt like a burden to my mom because I was the last kid. She had to work so much. I just didn't feel worthy. And I remember just contemplating suicide and, what if I wasn't here anymore? And the one thing that helped me not do that is my mom used to call, or she still does, her little champagne bubble. Because I would always put in like this happy front, even though I was breaking open inside, this happy front. And she would call me this little champagne bubble. And so every time I had those thoughts, I would just say, no, I can't do that, because I couldn't be even more of a burden to her. And if I'm her little champagne bubble, then like, gosh, I would break her as well. So I kept everything inside, and instead of going through with that, I would just cut, or I'd hurt myself, or I'd just sit there and punch myself, or I'd get a sharp object. And like, how much can I hurt myself before I leave like a lasting mark? And that's when I started dancing. And to pay for company is something where you have to try out for it. And if you get it, then you're competing all throughout the area, going to Las Vegas for competitions or New York. And it's really cool, but it's costly. And my mom is already working multiple jobs a week. And so I cleaned the studio in order to pay for dance. And I remember calling my mom one time after Peter and I had like this big blowout, crying at work. And I was just now looking back and I'm like, what was I doing calling my mom at work crying? She had to think about that. But she just said, go to the studio and dance. Go dance it out. And so that became my release. And that's why dance is so important to me, and music is because I was able to work through these big emotions that I didn't know how to handle. We didn't really talk about it. It wasn't something that was in the conversations that we ever had. My mom she was there for us, and she was there for us as much as she could be. And she was a loving mom. But I think that generation, the generation before, and even before, like all the way down the line, personal development is very new in the spectrum of human existence and working through these different things. And so I didn't know how to handle it. And so I went to the studio and I danced. And afterwards, I remember just like dropping to the ground and crying. And it was so healing. And so every like when those big emotions would come, and instead of hurting myself, I would go dance. And that helped me realize that, and it took time, and I still have had worthiness issues come up, and am I enough, or confidence and all of that. But it comes in different forms. And now I have this ability to just say, let me go back to myself. Let me either be with this or just go move my body and dance and feel what's actually going on and be able to work with that and through that. So that's like that's a big turning point into where I am now.
Well, I just want to say I'm so grateful that you're here with
Thank
us.
you.
Because your
Thank
story
you.
is impactful.
I appreciate
Not just
that.
for me, too. I've benefited so much from this. Thank you. The question came to mind is, I feel like everybody needs to find their dance, right? What is my dance? Whoever's listening, like, what is your dance?
Yeah.
You had your mom, which shout out to good moms, right?
Yeah, she was amazing.
What would your advice be for somebody that is in that same position or worse? I mean, situations are subjective, like we all have our own hard, but somebody that's going through a hard time but doesn't have their dance, what would your advice be to them?
First, and it's going to be probably very difficult, but first, to remind yourself that you are here for a reason. You, for whatever you believe or don't believe about any higher power, you are still here in your physical being for a reason. And like you went through this difficult time and you came out on this side, and you're able to share your story and help people who are going through something similar or can relate to your story in some way. And you don't have to be a coach who's serving people, and you don't have to be a person who's constantly serving people in order to know that your story, however you're showing up, however you're healing through that, however you're working through that, can be the change that somebody else needs. And so when you're going through that hard, keep one step in front of the other and figure, like, do I feel better when I go outside in nature? Do I feel better when I'm in the middle of a river or a lake? Do I feel better when I'm, on the roller coaster? I just need to like get adrenaline out. What is your dance? I think that's a great question for people to ask themselves, and figuring that out for you. Maybe it's crocheting, maybe it's playing basketball, whatever. But reminding yourself that you have a bigger reason. Even if you're working at a corporate job, you have a bigger reason. There's somebody that you're going to say something to, whether that's a team member, whether it's the person who you meet in the elevator, whoever it is. At one point in your life, you're going to say something to somebody who's having a really hard time, and that's going to stop them from pursuing anything that is life-ending. And you may never know that you were able to be that person for whoever that is. It could even just be opening the door and smiling and saying, hey, here's like a random act of kindness. And that person, it just hits them in that moment. So when you have, this is something I love doing, when I have those really exciting moments where I'm like, holy cow, I am epic. It worked. Things are happening. Or, when the things feel exciting and things feel like they're moving, record a video to yourself. We just worked through this. Like, I got this, I signed this person, I, climbed Mount Everest, I did this really cool epic thing, and you record that video in that moment of excitement, and you save it in a folder for when you're in those moments of despair and unworthiness and questioning life and questioning what you're doing. You can go to this library of videos of you winning and you taking these epic steps, or you doing something, even if it's just like, oh my gosh, I sang karaoke, I was so scared, but I did it. Awesome. Like, watch yourself, because that is you speaking to you. And you're just saying, hey, if you're watching this, whenever you're watching this, remember that I love you. I like sending love to yourself is so powerful. And going back to what you were saying is sometimes you don't like yourself. Sometimes you hate yourself. But when you can see a video and hear your own voice saying like, you got this, just keep going. I love you. You matter. You were meant to be here for whatever reason that is. You were meant to be here.
I love that. Yeah, if you're breathing, God's not done with you yet.
Yeah, exactly.
That's empowering. Yes. And I love that what I want to tie to is asking yourself those questions. When do I feel my best? And you may have multiple. You have art, you have dance, you have School of Badassery. You have the training, which I still want to, maybe sometime after this podcast, I want to hear about that. You have different outlets to serve different parts of your life. And that's important. So just get curious about yourself.
Yeah.
It's so easy to beat ourselves up. I always say, get curious, not furious.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Get curious with yourself. I used to just, every day I was like, I could have done so much better, blah, 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 blah. And it was always the only question is what could I have done better? But now I ask, what did I do good? And what could I have done better at the end of every night? And that's important. Embrace where you're at. Show up as your best self with how you know right now. And get curious and go find the best version of you.
I love that. That reminds me of The 4 Agreements. Have you read that book?
I have. Yes, I love that book.
That was a really great book of, being able to see yourself and holding yourself to a higher standard, but knowing that this is where I'm at today and I get to be better tomorrow, but I'm not going to harp on it. I'm not going to make myself feel bad. I'm going to treat myself as like, if I have a best friend and they start talking to me and like, you did horrible. That was shit. Oh, sorry.
No, this is Journey to Authenticity. Okay. So all you want.
It popped out. But I can't imagine talking to my best friend or my husband or people I love like that. So why are you doing that to yourself? And just in those moments where you're frustrated, you're like, this is stupid. I'm not going to be nice to myself. Just imagine yourself as your best friend. And what words would you say to your friend in that moment, and say those words to yourself?
Oh my goodness. There's times in my life, if I talk to somebody the way I talk to myself, I wouldn't have anybody.
Same.
So absolutely. The simple things of life really do matter. So
they do.
Self-talk matters. And I mean, when I went through my transformation, it was simple. Not that I didn't have anybody that I could trust, right? People were around me. My mom was around me, my family, my friends. Well, at that point, I didn't have a lot of friends, but that's because of my choices. And I realized that I was the cause of that. But I was also the cause of why I didn't have friends, so that I could find better and so that I could become better. But I started with books. I started with podcasts. And now I'm able to be here talking with people that I used to look up to. And you got to start somewhere. Yeah. So just start.
Yeah. And it's powerful. It's like, what is that medium?
Absolutely. Well, as we come to a close here, I have one last question for you. And that is, what is your definition of an authentic life?
Oof, definition of an authentic life is knowing that what makes you happy is extremely important to do on a daily basis, and figuring out what that is for you, and being able to be able to speak openly to yourself, and you're not trying to hide anything from yourself. And when you need to set up boundaries, because there are people who are going to try to be in your life where you're not going to be able to speak your voice. You're not even going to be able to share what your thoughts are. You're not going to be able to do a lot. And so how can you create a community around you that's not groupthink? They don't think always how you are, but how you can still say and speak what is on your heart and in your mind, and it be okay. But that be okay with you first. And you're not in this cycle of judgment, but you're just saying, okay, great. This is actually what I do think about this topic or this person or this situation that I'm going through. And it's okay. And I don't have to be any other person other than who I am right now in this moment.
I love that. Thank you so much, truly.
Of course.
This has been an honor.
Thank you for having me on here. I love it. I love the questions too. They're so good.
It gets me thinking. It's like, yeah, and I've loved all your insights. So
Thank you.
You truly are making an impact wherever you go. And that's the last thing that I'll leave for everybody today is if you are questioning your value in this world, go create it.
Mm-hmm.
Make a list of people you could call. It doesn't matter whether it's your mom, your dad, a brother, a sibling, somebody that you mentioned reconnecting with friends from high school or people that maybe weren't friends that just didn't have a good experience. Who could you serve today?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that have tried to commit suicide say that if they just had just one sign that they shouldn't go through without it, that they wouldn't have. So a simple smile, a simple wave could truly save somebody's life. So if you're questioning your value, go give value, even if it's just a smile.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Awesome. Let's jump to Rooted and Rising here quickly.
Perfect.
Alrighty. Rooted and Rising, what's going on, you guys? I'm so grateful to have Kirsten joining us today. This podcast one has just been an honor. So I'm excited that we were able to jump in a little bit more with you.
Yeah,
here.
Me too. I'm here for it. This is great.
Absolutely. So Cindy asked the question, what was the greatest challenge in owning your identity and stepping into your confidence?
That's a good one. That is similar to what we were talking about in the podcast. There's stepping stones. I don't know if there's, besides that moment of going to the dance studio and just really understanding who I was and understanding emotions, but really coming home to myself and recognizing that despite what I do, despite my title, despite who I hang out with, I am worthy and I am here for a reason. And to know that I have a place in this plane, in this earth, that I get to be and I get to share with people. And having this, it's that self-appreciation, self-trust, and it's like almost self-admiration. Like, I got this. I am great, even though I maybe messed up in this, or I didn't know exactly what to do in this moment. I'm still a good person at the core. And I can stand true in that. I know my values. And I think values are really good for confidence as well, because you can speak your truth in that way. When you know what your values, you know what you stand for, then that's like where that confidence comes from. It's not on the outside. It's deep within of like, who am I outside of all these different, the director, the CEO, the manager, the mom, the wife, the husband, whatever it is. When you recognize that you are an incredible human being just as you, that's where things start to transpire and this confidence comes, because it's like, okay, cool. I know who I am. I know I'm like, I should be here. This is great. And you can walk in that. But unless you have those other ingredients, I think it's going to be really difficult.
I love that. And something that you touched on initially of what we wanted to talk about was devotion and discipline. And to me, it's the devotion, right? It's not forced. You're finding you. Yeah. And you're staying devoted to that. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So in my experience, discipline is something that is almost feels like it has to be forced. There's the willpower, and then we all know as you go through the day, your willpower is depleted. And for me, it was, okay, I'm trying to be disciplined in doing this, and it wasn't fun. And when I was able to really understand devotion to self, it doesn't have to be devotion is usually used for religious or spiritual, or like I'm devoting myself to God or a higher power. But if you take that and you put it towards yourself, is how can I devote myself to where I want to be, to who I want to step into this next chapter of my life? And how can I set myself up to be in the best position tomorrow, in a week, in a month, in a year, in 5 years, by taking action now? And maybe it's just choosing to eat healthy, and maybe it's moving your body, maybe it's having those conversations with people who you may need to space yourself away from, and putting a boundary there and saying, okay, this is not the type of negativity that I need in my life, because I'm devoting myself to who I am, and the energy that I get to choose is around me. And I think when you start switching it around from discipline or being a people pleaser, and you start devoting yourself to you, it doesn't mean that you're taking anything away from a higher power. It's a both and. You can devote yourself to whatever you want to devote yourself to, and devote yourself to who you are and what you're becoming.
I love that. Thank you. And one last question was, what's the hardest limiting belief you've had to let go of?
That I'm not enough. That I'm not enough it still creeps in every once in a while. And it's just, like we were talking about in the podcast, I think there's different levels, and you work through something. I remember, I don't know if you had this or anybody who had this listening. In kindergarten, you had that little parachute, and there was different color triangles. And you each had a handle. And at first, when you're going through something, you're at the yellow, and you're working through something, you overcome it or you work through it. And the next time it comes up in your life, whether it's in a month, a year, a couple of years, you now have experienced yellow, but now you're standing at blue. So you bring the education that you had from yellow, and you're working through it with yellow and blue. And then the next time it comes through your life, you're having the education and the know-how from yellow, blue, and now you're at green. And so things will constantly be coming up, no matter if you're like, oh, I am confident, I've got my confidence, this is great. In a month, something may happen and it may be like bursted a bubble, but you still have that piece, that little sliver of confidence that you learned, in yellow. And now you're going through it in blue, and it's like, okay, great. I still have this, and I know that I can hold on to that. I just need to almost up-level myself and figure out how to work through it in this new space, in this new situation, because every situation is going to be different, and it comes at different levels.
I love that. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, to say the least. It's when you go through one thing, it'll show up again. Mm-hmm. But now you have those resources to keep conquering.
Yeah.
And keep going forward. Thank you so much, truly, for coming on.
Thank you.
And thank you, Rooted and Rising. So excited for you guys. Thanks again.
Of course.
Thanks so much for listening to the Journey to Authenticity podcast today. If you liked what both myself and Kirsten had to say, be sure to like and subscribe, as this helps to ensure that we get the highest quality and most interesting guests to help you come transform your life. Also, why I have you here, if you're ready to jump into the things that we talked about, purpose, community, getting creative, and building a business around your purpose, I'd love to have you in Rooted and Rising. It's my community group coaching program where we really do just that. We build a community. We dive deep into ourselves, our relationships in life, so that we can ultimately enjoy the fruits of our labor. With that in mind, I hope you have a good rest of your day, everybody. How was that? Good? Yeah, that's good. Okay.